You are listening to the radio during the final Ice Age. Ending was slower, a long, drawn-out exhale. Itself froze into a kind of routine. By the time we understood what was happening, it was already too late. Not just a bad winter, not a volcanic winter, but something older, something planetary. The Earth's natural cycles had snapped. The last balance, the one scientists warned us we were leaning too far into, finally tipped. And when it did, the warmth bled out of everything. They called it the final Ice Age because there won't be another one after this. Not with us around to witness it. Cities, they're gone. Not just towering skyscrapers snapped like brittle icicles under the weight of accumulating frost. Roads crumbled beneath feet of permafrost. The old highways are buried under layers of snow and ice so deep they may as well be myths. New York is a jagged white silhouette on the horizon, frozen mid-scream. Tokyo lies beneath a glass ocean, crusted over and silent. Even the equator wasn't spared. When the jet stream collapsed, so did everything we thought we understood about climate zones. There's no warm place left. The sun still rises technically, but it doesn't feel like light anymore. The sky is an endless sheet of gray, sometimes green, sometimes bruised, purple, depending on the chemicals swirling up in the upper atmosphere. The clouds hang low, pregnant with frozen poison. When it snows now, it isn't soft, obsolete. No one waits for orders when your breath is frosting over in your lungs. Communication lines shattered when the satellites failed to correct their drift. Power grids couldn't take the freeze. Most data is lost, either corroded or frozen in servers no one can reach anymore. A few underground archives exist, or so people say, but it's hard to separate fact from folklore when there's no one left to verify the truth. What's left now are factions, survival cells, scavenger enclaves. Some are just families bundled together in old metro tunnels or repurposed bunkers, feeding off canned beans and melted snow. Others are more organized militia-like, territorial. I've never met anyone who's been there. Most people who go searching don't come back. Then there are the drifters, like me. I keep to the outskirts, away from settlements, away from the noise. It's safer that way, most of the time. Old landmarks are jokes now. Mount Rushmore's face collapsed under a landslide of frozen shale. The Eiffel Tower, last I heard, cracked in two under its own icy weight. Even the oceans are mostly frozen near. The coasts, ships that once dotted the horizon, are entombed in white, their masts jutting from the ice like grave markers. Entire cruise liners are turned into shelter havens now, mid-motion, staring blankly into the wind. Same with humans, I guess. I remember green. I remember the warmth of asphalt under bare feet, the weightless feel of air that didn't hurt to breathe. But it's dangerous to remember too much. Nostalgia doesn't keep you alive, it makes you hesitate. And hesitation gets you killed. Out here still, there's something about this morning, and I swear, off in the distance, the edge of the sky has the faintest hint of gold. They said this was the last Ice Age sunrise. I don't know what comes next. Maybe nothing. Maybe something we can't yet imagine. But the sun is climbing, even if it can barely breach the clouds. That counts for something. You're listening to me now, whoever you are. Maybe you're huddled near a cracked battery radio, wrapped in plastic and threadbare wool. Still exists. Either way, you're still listening. that means you're still alive. And for now, in this world, that's enough. I am the voice in your earpiece, the static whisper guiding you through the cold. My name is Mara Quinn, once a climatologist, now the lone broadcaster in a world gone white. I survived the thaw that never came back, and I've outlasted the spring that never returned. Every day, I climb up to this makeshift mast. Before the freeze, I studied ancient ice cores, hopeful we could learn from past climates to save our own. I had a team, a lab, a world that still worked. But when the glaciers started surging south and the forecasts turned apocalyptic, our university shut its doors. Labs powered down, then the power grid failed altogether. We buried our data in deep freeze vaults, hoping someone might unearth it when winters ended. I kept one core sample in my pack until months later, the sample froze solid and shattered under its own weight. I stumbled south, chasing rumors of salvage camps and geothermal shelters, hauling a rucksack heavy with canned food and faded photographs. I lost count of how many nights I woke to the howl of snow wolves circling my camp, or watched the aurora borealis crackling like distant gunfire. But I kept moving. To stop and concede defeat, now I live on the fringes. My radio station, if you can even call it that, broadcasts from an old grain silo repurposed into a hollow tower of metal and ice. Within these walls, I'm protected barely from the wind that scours the open plains. Every bolt corrodes, every board creaks under the weight of frost, but it stands. Antennas lens clear away the rime ice and crank the generator until the meter flickers green. Then I slip on headphones and listen static, then faint crackles that might be other survivors, or might only be echoes of hope playing tricks on my mind. If I'm lucky, I catch someone calling in, a whispered name, coordinates scrawled in, frost on a scrap of paper, the cough of someone trying to speak. Water comes from melting ice in a battered pot over a propane burner. I guard my Fuel 6 small canisters, left like precious relics. Food is freeze-dried packets, traded for salvaged tools or bits of scrap metal. Temperature control is a game of constant adjustment. Tarps, animal pelts, scavenged from frozen carcasses. There is no warmth, only degrees of cold. And the closer you get to zero, the thinner you feel inside, as if your spirit might crack like a brittle icicle. Each night, I write a log, time-stamped in radio time, coordinates, weather, supplies, and if I dare small thoughts. Yesterday's entry reads, January 17th, 2030. Temperature, minus 48 degrees Celsius. Generator ran 42 minutes before sputtering. Caught a distant, voice choppy, but a voice. They said, North Ridge, lot 62.5, long, 149.3, could be lead poisoning, could be Edenfield. I'll check at first light. Maybe one day someone will piece them together, follow my breadcrumbs, and find answers. Maybe they'll find this silo, too. What drives me isn't just survival-et's connection, of laughter in a warm room, and the ache of voices around a dinner table. I long to hear those sounds again. Every time I hear a crackle on the band, hope flares briefly warming me from within. Hope is dangerous here. It can blind you to reality. Yet, without it, there is only the endless march of days, one frozen after another. Hope and grief walk hand in hand. I carry both. I lost Celeste, partner of 10 years to the first ice storm that claimed half our research station. I promised we'd make it home together, but I kept going because, for Celeste, I swore I would. Since then, I've picked up other losses, camps raided by marauders, makeshift families succumbing to frostbite, dreams frozen mid-breath. Yet I've found small victories, too. A cache of solar panels buried in a collapsed motel basement, a trove of medical supplies hidden in an old pharmacy vault. Each discovery is a lifeline, and I scrawl its location on scrap tags I hang inside the silo. I know I won't find everyone, but if I leave maps of breadcrumbs, maybe someone else will. Emotionally, I'm a map of scars. Some run deep memories of a world that felt too short. Others are fresher slap of loneliness every time the wind howls through the cracks. At night, when the generator goes silent, I light a single candle beside the microphone and speak my fears into the darkness. If you can hear me, know you're not alone. If you're out there, keep the flame alive. Then I let the flame gutter until it dies, and I sleep in the cold again, wrapped in memories. I've learned to trust few and question all. A stranger at my door might be a friend or might be looking for the propane I barter, trade, and sometimes hide, but I listen. Even when they spin, Liza Vedenfield of a valley warmed by geothermal springs I listen, because hope often wears the garb of fiction. I take the stories I deem plausible and mark them on my mental map, then decide if chasing them is worth the risk. My body shows the toll, fingers scarred by frostbite, hair frost clumped into spikes, eyes reddened by cold glare. I move slowly, deliberately conserving energy. My boots are worn through, leather splits and flakes. I patch them with duct tape and leftover ski straps. Every step is a negotiation with gravity and frost. Some days I limp to the silo, half dead, but still determined to broadcast. Still, beneath the crust of survival, a core of stubbornness keeps me alive. I cling to the belief that voices matter, that if I whisper into the void, I might eventually breach the silence. I yearn for a network of voices others like me, calling in from ruins and hideouts. I yearn for a chorus of human resilience to drown out the wind. So this is who I am now, Mara Quinn, the frost-bitten climatologist turned radio lifeline. I greet each sunrise, though weak, with a promise that I will keep talking, that I will keep listening, and that I will never let hope freeze solid. Because as long as even one voice remains, the world isn't entirely lost. Tomorrow, I intend to follow those coordinates. North Ridge, 62.5, 149.3. If the promise there is true, I may find warmth or at least another soul. If it's a trap, I'll retreat. But I will go, because the alternative is to stay here, alone, in a frozen tomb. And I refuse to bow out that quietly. I am here, I am listening, and I'm sending my voice into the cold, hoping it finds you. The crisis we're facing now isn't. Simply the cold is what the cold has unleashed. Over the past 6 months, the weather patterns have twisted into something unnatural, something viciously unpredictable. 1 week, the wind gusts carry razor-sharp sleet that tears at exposed skin. The next, the mercury plunges without warning, turning breath into shattering frost. The storms have grown in size and ferocity, the very atmosphere revolting against the last of our tampering with the planet It began in March, when spring should have been creeping northward, coaxing snows to melt and life to stir. Instead, the jet stream buckled like a snapped rubber band, sending cold air surging south in a series of cyclonic blasts. Satellites recorded record-low stratospheric temperatures, down to minus 90 degrees Celsius at 20 kilometers altitude, and unprecedented vortex disturbances. I heard the data reports on shortwave radio before the stations went silent. But even the numbers couldn't capture the terror of that first storm. That morning, the sky turned electric. I watched through the silo's porthole as eddies of silver lightning danced inside roiling black clouds. The wind began as a mournful howl, building to a deafening roar that shook the metal walls. I braced myself against a support beam, listening to the hammering of ice on the outer plating. For 24 hours, the storm raged, blasting the plains with snowdrifts that piled higher than my head, burying the entrance to the silo and silencing the radio antenna. When the storm finally passed, the temperature had plummeted to minus 72 degrees Celsius at ground level. The generator failed mid-broadcast, its wiring brittle with cold. I lost 3 days' worth of logs when the backup batteries froze and lost capacity. I nearly lost hope. That storm was a reminder. Nature isn't just indifferent, it's retaliatory. Survival here has forged unlikely alliances and bitter enmities. A month after the first superstorm, I emerged from the silo through a half-buried entry hatch to scout fresh firewood. I encountered 2 figures trudging through the drift swan clad in scavenged riot gear, the other in what looked like a patched quilt of animal pelts. Their faces were obscured by goggles and balaclavas, but their posture spoke desperation. "Stand down," the armored one said, voice crackling through a makeshift radio. He held a rusted rifle pointed at my chest. Fear froze me for a moment, till the second figure stepped forward and raised empty hands. "I've seen your broadcasts," she said. "Mara Quinn." Recognition flickered in their eyes, she explained. They were from a coalition calling themselves the Frost Sentinel, self-styled protectors of the few remaining communities. They'd heard my coordinates embedded in a crackle, emblematic of a hope they sorely needed. After tense negotiations over dwindling propane reserves and ration tags scrawled with map coordinates, they agreed to escort me to their enclave provided. I aided their scouts in mapping the next perimeter before the next storm. But trust is a currency rarer than fuel. On the return trek, we were ambushed by scavengers raiders who hunt lone travelers for supplies. The riot gear fellow went down under crossfire. We escaped, but at the cost of their propane ration and half my food packets. I radioed in their coordinates anyway. Despite their losses, I couldn't betray my code. Every voice matters. Allies here can become enemies the next day. I've learned to read intentions in the tilt of a head, the way someone holds their radio mic. Boy Scouts of hope can morph into wolves of desperation. But without those fleeting alliances, I'd never have harvested the solar-powered battery banks hidden in a buried garage, nor discovered the thermal vents under an abandoned spa sent warm air into fissures in the permafrost enough to melt. A shallow pond for fresh water. Each sunrise now brings fresh threats. Fuel caches freeze solid or are raided. Meltwater pots crack under thermal stress, spilling precious liquid onto the floor. where it refreezes into hazardous ice. Food packets have shriveled in taste and nutrient density. The manufacturers never anticipated decades of sub-zero storage. Protein supplements are long gone. I'm down to powdered greens, and the occasional trading ration of freeze-dried mush. Water is ironically scarce. Though ice is everywhere, the energy cost to melt and sterilize it is high. At current generator efficiency, I need 1 kilogram of propane to melt 20 liters of ice safely yet. Propane costs have tripled thanks to raider taxes and steep trade tariffs enforced by the frost sentinels. Some days, I choose cold thirst over negative energy yield. Then there's the psychological toll, the mental load of constant vigilance, the anxiety that creeps in when a gentle breeze is mistaken for the first whisper of a storm. The stress, hormones in my bloodstream are chronic. I've learned to track cortisol spikes by counting the tremor in my voice as I speak into the mic. The body can adapt to cold better than it can to perpetual fear. Behind me, towns have reverted to ghost villages. Schools stand empty, chalkboards still scrawled with lessons unfinished. Hospitals are mausoleums of rusting gurneys and shattered for drips. The agricultural belts once the world's granaries are frozen into crusted wastelands. Their grain, silos as hollow as souls. The loss of plant life has accelerated atmospheric CO fluctuations, causing further albedo feedback. More ice means more sunlight reflected, meaning colder global temperatures. We're locked in a downward spiral. Wildlife that survived the initial freeze is now collapsing under extreme food shortages. Herds of reindeer have thinned to skeletal frames. Predators starve or turn feral. Rivers are choked with floating ice rafts, killing any aquatic life beneath. Even methane clathrates trapped in permafrost are destabilizing small pockets of explosive gas hissing from ground fissures, igniting into sudden fire blasts that carve new craters in the ice. It's as if the planet is convulsing under the weight of climate imbalance. Human society, to the extent it exists, clings to barter economies, metal tools, batteries, sewing kits, antibiotics. These are the new currency. Knowledge is priceless. I've been asked to trade data from my old research paleoclimate models that could guide future terraforming or relocation. Yet even these charts and code fragments are encrypted in my head. I have no drive left to store them on physical media. Melting ice demands fuel. Current ratio, 1 kilogram propane gives 20 L meltwater, gives 10 L potable after boiling and filtering. I carry a 12-stage filter scavenged from an old mining operation, but filters clog within days. Daily caloric requirement in minus 60 degrees Celsius environment is roughly 4,000 kilocalories. I manage 1,800 kcal most days. Muscles, waist, body fat reserves are perilously low. Propane and biodiesel caches are limited. Solar charging is unreliable under constant overcast. My panels yield to W per square meter, on average enough for radio, but insufficient for melting. Antibiotics and anti-inflammatories are near extinction. I resort to field dressings and herb infusions, but infection is a constant threat. The silo protects from wind chill, but its insulation is failing. Ice builds inside, compressing insulation layers and shrinking the habitable volume. Line inner walls with scavenged thermal blankets, space blankets. Snow is an excellent insulator. Our value approximately equals 1 per 100 millimeters. Locate geothermal or industrial heat vents under frozen ground. Even 5 degrees Celsius water seeping from cracks can jumpstart melting one vent, can reduce propane usage by 30%. Paint shallow trays black with burned goat fat. Lay ice chunks in direct but rare sunlight. Black surfaces absorb low-angle solar radiation, increasing melt rate. A UV lamp powered by scavenged batteries can sterilize 5 liters per charge cycle. Complement boiling to save fuel. Use a homemade aneroid barometer to predict storms. A drop of 10 HPA over 12 hours indicates a 70%. It often precedes gusts over 80 kilometers per hour. Every day, the world grows colder. Every resource cache diminishes. The feedback loops of a dying climate accelerate. More ice means less. Thaw means more ice. Social structures collapse. Lawlessness spreads. Because beneath the ice and storms, the human spark still flickers. We adapt or we die. I choose to adapt tonight. Another superstorm is brewing to the west. I can hear the low hum of distant thunder, a warning etched in wind. I'll secure the hatch, ration the propane, and whisper into the mic, brace yourselves. This one's going to be worse than the last. Hold fast, and I'll guide you through. Because if I stop talking, the silence might be the final disaster. The storm cleared hours ago, but its aftermath still claws at the world. The wind has shifted, bringing a silence that's more dangerous than any howl. When the gale dies down, predators come out, and sometimes, so do men with guns. My stockpile dwindles faster than I dare admit on air. This morning I checked the rations box. 6 packets of freeze-dried oatmeal, 4 jerky strips, 2 hard candy pieces that taste like stale chalk, and 1 last pouch of powdered eggs. I can stretch it 2 meals a day, supplemented by what little hunting I manage. Yesterday, I tracked a lone snow hare, only to watch it vanish into a drift. My water jug holds just 10 liters. I've rationed it to a liter per day. That's my lifeline for the radio, but each broadcast eats half a liter. In 2 days, unless I find more, the world may lose my voice. And with it, whatever scraps of hope I've managed to broadcast on air. I sanitize the truth, dear listeners. Supplies are tight but steady. I'm confident we'll manage through this. Beneath that veneer, dread festers. My hands shake as I twist open the canisters, measuring each drop of diesel like it's liquid gold. When the meter reads low, I hesitate before cranking the generator each turn, a gamble. Is it worth broadcasting today, or should I save the fuel until the next crisis? The first attack came 2 weeks ago. I was out gathering driftwood when I heard them, distant shouts, the bark of rifles, the thud of snowshoes pounded into crust. I froze, heart pounding so loud it drowned the howling wind. The frost sentinels I'd once thought of them as allies weren't behind this. These were ghost hawks, a ruthless survivalist gang that preys on lone outposts. They caught me halfway across the frozen expanse, encircling me in a semicircle of shadows. Their leader, a gaunt man known only as Crow, spoke in clipped tones. Propane, food, radio gear. Nothing else matters. His words cut colder than the air. I offered them what little I had: one meal packet, 2 liters of water, my backup hand crank radio. They set my supplies ablaze in the snow, sending up a plume of black smoke that colored the horizon like an omen. Then they turned and vanished, leaving me bleeding hope in their wake. Back at the silo, the ground around the entrance was chewed up by their snowplow sleds. I replaced broken panels, braced the door with salvaged steel braces, and sealed gaps with thermal putty. Each repair costs time, energy, and materials I can't spare. And will there be anything left for me to defend? Rumors surface in the static like ghosts, whispers of a place called Sunwell, a subterranean hot spring asterisk complex deep beneath the northern ice cap. Legend claims its waters stay liquid year-round, warmed by volcanic fissures. They say survivors there have built greenhouses, gardens of hardy tubers, and fungi powered by geothermal vents. They speak of a community thriving with enough fuel and supplies to share. I've heard the name too many times to dismiss, but each report conflicts. Some say Sunwell lies at grid coordinates 68.4 N minus 150.2 W. Others claim it's at 67.9 N minus 148.7 W. Some say the place is a mirage, a cruel joke played by frost-bitten minds. Others swear they've seen smoke rising from twin chimneys on a wind-bitten afternoon. I huddled by my receiver and recorded everything: timestamps, frequencies, signal strengths. The pattern suggests a single source, a beacon centered near latitude 68N. If that's true, Sunwell lies 600 kilometers north across territory I can barely traverse in spring. Impossible in the dead of winter. Chasing Sunwell is a gamble between salvation and suicide. I can't ignore the possibility it's real, but taking the journey means abandoning the silo and its last supplies. If I fail, I'll die alone on the ice, my voice lost to the void. If I succeed, I might find a community, water that flows, warmth that doesn't kill, people who remember what green looks like. The longer I broadcast, the more I feel tethered to this lonely outpost. The silo is my anchor, my prison, and my pulpit all at once. Leaving means surrendering the one thing that gives my life purpose, the act of reaching out, of bearing witness to this dying world. But the thought of succumbing here frozen, me more often. At night, I pace the narrow corridor, headphones on, speaking into the void. If you can hear me, Sunwell is calling. If you made it, reply in code. I will come. Then I wait and wait. Sometimes I catch a faint response. 1 crisp Morse dot, 3 dots, 2 dashes. Could be a hit to noise. Could be someone. My pulse races. Should I trust it, or is it another ghost hawk trick, a lure to draw me into their trap? My mind splinters between hope and terror. Hope insists this could be the answer, a chance to rebuild. Terror warns, they'll kill you for your radio gear. They'll let you freeze in a ditch. The conflict gnaws me from inside out. Decisions here aren't guided by logic. Alone, they're contagions of emotion, infecting every plan. Already, the barometer warns of dropping pressure. Another storm is forming on radar arrays salvaged months ago, a swirling vortex of sub-zero fury, bigger than any we've recorded. This season, forecasts predict blizzard conditions extending over 300 kilometers. winds exceeding 120 kilometers per hour, snow drifts up to 5 meters tall. This storm could bury the silo. It could knock out my antenna for good. It could kill me. I scrambled to prepare, reinforcing, window shutters with steel plates, digging a secondary escape tunnel in case the main door jams, stockpiling extra blankets and sealant. But each action drains fuel, tools, and time. The ghost hawks know I'm vulnerable. Now they'll sense it on their own primitive weather scrawls. The countdown to either the storm's end or their reappearance ticks away in my mind like an ominous metrome dot in the midst of this maelstrom. A sliver of fortune. I coaxed 3 abandoned battery modules back to life. They charged my emergency beacon for an hour, enough to broadcast a distressed pulse on a low band reserved for rescue operations. No response yet, but sending it meant risking detection by every hostile on the ice. I weighed that risk against the chance of attracting Sunwell's guardians and pressed the key. That same night, I heard something unexpected, a crisp, formal voice on backup frequency. Mara Quinn, broadcasting from the Frostbreaker silo. This is Dr. Alina Frost of the Northern Biosphere Initiative. We've been monitoring your signal. Prepare coordinates for a rendezvous. We come in daylight. Alina Frost. I recognized the name from pre-collapse climate conferences. She was a leading researcher on permafrost methane release. If she's still alive, her team might possess the technology to stabilize or even reverse portions of the permafrost meltdown. The NBI, if it exists, could hold the key to preventing further catastrophic ice clathrate events. My heart hammered. Allies at last. A chance to amplify my impact beyond the silo. Yet questions swirled. Why reveal themselves now? Could they be ghost hawks in lab coats? Or worse, a rogue branch of the old world's elite, hoarding resources for an inner circle? With the storm barreling in and the ghost hawks likely circling close, I'm at a crossroads. Stay and prepare for battle. Fortify the silo. Ration every resource. Hope to outlast both storm and raiders. Go north to Sunwell's coordinates chasing. Myth in a desperate gamble. Staying promises safety, but continued isolation, risking death by siege or suffocation. Going to Sunwell gambles my current life for an uncertain future. Meeting Frost could yield resources and knowledge if she's real, if she's trustworthy, but might also invite new enemies. I pace the generator room, past the sputtering lantern and frozen ink pot. My breath fogs the lenses of the recorder. I run scenarios in my head. I tighten my gloves, shaking with both cold and adrenaline. On air, I switch to all call mode. Attention, this is Mara Quinn. To whoever you are, friend or stranger, I need information. Respond on frequency 732 kilohertz with your identity and intentions. I repeat, this is not a trick. I will come to you if I can trust you. Don't let this be my final broadcast. I slam down the key. Silence answers, then faint. At first a rapid series of beeps, dash, dash, a coded handshake. It's neither ghost, hawk, nor scavenger. It's human, and it's close enough to track. Hope glints like a frozen shard in the darkness. Terror thrums beneath it. I know one thing. I can't stay here another night, waiting for answers. The storm will bury me alive, or the raiders will breach these walls. I must choose a path. I gather what I can carry. a full canister of diesel, the juiciest ration packets, my recorder, the bent compass Celeste gave me, and a handful of thermal blankets. I write a final log in the silo's journal. I'm leaving at first light. I follow the beacon's code. If this fails, I'm sorry, but I must keep moving. The storm arrives in hours. May the wind guide my steps. I lock the silo door. Behind me, the world outside crackles with tension, every snowflake sharper than a blade, every breath a wager. As I step into the wasteland, the wind tosses my scarf like a taunt. My boots crunch on ice. My heart pounds. My radio crackles with that coded reply, faint but real. It calls me northward, and so I walk toward the unknown, toward Sunwell, or Frost's rescue, or another trap laid by desperate souls. I walk into the storm because staying would mean dying inside these walls. Cut off from humanity's last threads. Tonight, survival isn't enough. I need answers. I need connection. I need hope. And if I perish chasing it, let my final footsteps echo through the Issa Testament that even in the dead of winter, the human spirit refuses to freeze. The wind screamed in my ears as I crested the final ridge. Each step a battle against the gale. My frozen breath stung my lungs, but I pressed on, guided by the faint pulse of Dr. Frost's beacon. Ahead, a jagged canyon split the ice kappa, yawning mouth leading to a hidden world. I dropped into the chasm, heart hammering, and followed the narrow crevasse deeper, boots crunching over blue-white walls that glowed from within at the bottom. I found it, an ancient lava tube carved into the glacier's heart, heated by subterranean fissures. Steam hissed from vents, turning the frigid air damp and warm. A metal grate barred the entrance, its locking mechanism wrapped in frost. My gloved fingers danced over the frozen gears until, with a tortured groan, the door opened inward. Beyond lay Dr. Frost's sanctuary, walls reinforced with salvaged shipping containers, insulation patched with mylar, and tarp-formed a cluster of domes around a central steam vent reactor. Ducts carried geothermal heat into greenhouses, where bioluminescent fungi and Boeing stalks of quinoa swayed under lead arrays salvaged from polar research stations. The air smelled faintly of soil and chlorophyll, a memory I thought I'd lost forever. Footsteps echoed. A figure emerged from the mist, face-lined but eyes bright. Dr. Alina Frost stepped forward, her parka hood pushed back to reveal chalk-white hair and a scar tracing her left cheek. "Mara Quinn," she said, voice steady over the hiss of steam. "You came." I nodded, exhaustion and relief warring in my chest. "I followed your signal." Behind her, technicians in mismatched parkas worked over consoles. Animated displays projected thermal maps of the vent system, showing hot zones and cooling fractures. One screen read, "FISURE Frost's smile faltered. We're losing heat. A vent collapse upstream cut our energy flow by half. In 2 weeks, the reactor will fail. Then these domes freeze and everything dies." I sank onto a crate. My hands trembled as I rubbed them together. "There has to be a way." "Already tried," Frost said. "We sent teams into the ice tunnels to shore up the fissure walls. They collapsed. We tried drilling relief channels. The drills seized in the sub-zero." She paused. "We need a more radical solution." I stood. "What do you need me to do?" Frost led me deeper into the complex. past rows of seedlings glowing under lamp arrays. We need to divert a portion of the main vents flow directly into the quake-damaged channel. It'll stabilize the cavern walls with heat, but will risk overloading the pressure lines. If we miscalculate, the vent could erupt steaming lava, superheated steam, an explosion that would collapse the entire tube. My heart thundered. A decision loomed. Volunteer for a mission that might save the sanctuary or kill me in a burst of molten rock. Yet beyond these domes lay the promise of rebirth. Green fields rooted in ice, water flowing from steam condensers, a community rising from the frost. I swallowed. Show me the schematics. In the reactor control hub, Frost and her engineer, Tariq unrolled a thermal pressure schematic traced over 6 stacked layers of ice. The main vent ran beneath the cavern floor, branching north toward the frozen exterior. A secondary fissure, 3 meters wide, led to the damaged Section 30. Meters away, we need to build a heat transfer conduit, a high-pressure steel pipe wrapped in asbestos-like insulation will open the main valve just enough to push superheated steam through the conduit, melting the ice around the fissure and ceiling cracks. His voice shook, even seasoned. Engineers fear steam explosions. Frost handed me a worn leather pack. These are the drill bits and pipe segments. You'll lead a small team through the maintenance tunnel. Once the conduit is in place, Tariq will open the valve. You only have minutes before pressure builds. I strapped on a headlamp and tested the torque on my insulated gloves. I thought of Celeste her bright laugh in the sunlit lab. I thought of the countless voices I'd contacted on the radio, clinging to any spark of hope. Failure wasn't an option. We go now, I said. The maintenance tunnel was narrow, barely enough room for single file. Steam droplets condensed on the ceiling, forming icicles that dripped into the grating below. My team of 4-2 local survivors Frost had recruited, and 2 Frost's hardened technicians moved with grim determination. Halfway to the fissure, the tunnel shook. A tremor, faint but real. The walls buckled, and ice shards rained down. One of the survivors, Juno, caught a shard in her arm. She hissed, but pressed on, the cut quickly icing over. "This is it," I whispered, sighting the cavern mouth ahead. We emerged into a great vault of ice, the fissure yawning before us, its walls crisscrossed with hairline fractures, steam spurting from hidden veins. The air here was nearly 80 degrees Celsius, so hot it warped my breath mask. I signaled Tariq over the radio. "We're in position. Begin spool out." A mechanical whine answered, and the conduit unreeled, a steel serpent sliding across the ice floor. We wrestled the pipe toward the fissure's mouth, anchoring segments with improvised clamps. Steam hissed, mingling with the frigid air in a cloud of fog. "Open valve, slowly," Tariq's voice warned. Frost's gloved hand flicked the lever. A hiss grew to roar as superheated steam shot into the conduit. Immediately, ice around the pipe began to melt, water sluicing down the fissure, carrying slush into the cavern. The walls steamed, and molten channels formed. But then an ear-splitting crack. A major fracture split along the cavern roof. Ice cascaded down, dove behind a pipe segment as colossal slabs thundered overhead. My ears rang. The world went white. Dazed, I shook slush from my helmet. The conduit lay warped. A segment had snapped open, leaking scalding steam. The fissure split wider, and walls began to groan. The cavern was collapsing. I radioed for a halt. Valve off now. Tariq's voice was distant. Pressure to high shutdown sequence, not responding. Time stretched, I realized. What must be done? I had to manually vent the steam. I darted for the emergency release, Hatchan iron wheel bolted to the cavern wall. My gloves scorched as I twisted the wheel. Steam blasted out through a relief vent, carving a hole in the ice above. The roar was deafening. My vision blurred. Shrapnel of ice sprayed around me. I slammed the wheel again and again. Finally, the hissing steam slackened. Frost and Tariq's voices crackled approval across the radio. Pressure normalized. Conduit stable. You saved it. I sank to my knees as the cavern walls settled, fissures sealing under the heat. The maintenance tunnel stabilized enough for us to retreat. I staggered back into the main greenhouse dome, limbs trembling. Frost caught me, supporting my weight. Light from the LED arrays glinted off melting frost on the domed ceiling. The temperature had ticked up 5 degrees above the freezing point of the outer ice. We did it, Frost whispered, voice thick with relief. You did it. Around us, seedlings perked, leaves unfurling in the warm air. A faint trumpet of steam vented into the condenser, and drip by drip, liquid water filled a trough. Life pulsed in the tubes. Overhead, the first faint star of dawn glimmered through the frost-laced skylight. I closed my eyes. Memories of the silo's frozen walls replaced by green. My heart swelled with a profound exhaustion, an impossible hope in the afterglow. I pressed my palm to the warm glass of the greenhouse. This mission nearly cost me everything. My safety, maybe my life. But it also taught me that hope must be welded by action, not just words over the radio. I had to move beyond broadcasting. I had to risk everything for something real. I thought of all the survivors who'd tuned in of, the ghost hawks, the frost sentinels, the drifters like me. Some would never see this place, but now, maybe, some could follow my path, navigate the ravaged ice, and find sanctuary, or at least pick up the fragments of hope we forged here. Frost placed a hand on my shoulder. What now? I let the warmth of the dome seep into my bones. I would send a broadcast from Hera Beacon in the storm, a promise that life could return. And then we'd plan journeys north and south, mapping safe corridors, forging alliances, rebuilding what we lost. I pressed the intercom, all channels. This is Mara Quinn. If you can hear me, follow the signal. Sunwell is real. You are not alone. My voice carried over the crackle of static, cutting through the endless wind. Outside, the sky brightened into a pale gold, the promise of a sunrise that wasn't just about light or heat, but about resilience and human will. I had found the turning point. Against all odds, I chose to act, and in doing so, I ignited the spark that might yet thaw this frozen world. The hiss of steam had faded to a gentle sigh. Inside the greenhouse, droplets coalesced on leaf edges, shining like morning dew. The reactor core's glow warmed the packed earth floor beneath my boots. The world beyond these domes was still a wasteland of ice and ash butt here. For the first time in as long as I could remember, life had broken through. Our conduit held. The fissure's walls, sealed by the redirected steam, have stabilized, enough to channel continuous warmth. In 24 hours, we observed a sustained 7-degree rise in cavern temperature, solidifying channels and halting dangerous collapses. Seed trays, once on the brink of freezing, recovered roots, pushing deeper into the thawing substrate. Water flow from the condensers increased by 30%, enough to guarantee 2 liters per person per day for the next month. Dr. Frost's reactor team has mapped pressure dynamics and determined that, with careful modulation, we can maintain steady geothermal input for at least a year without risking catastrophic overpressure. That buys time to expand the domed network, reinforce ice tunnels, and train more hands. Hope isn't a grand dawn. It's the quiet persistence of green in gray. Watching the seedlings stretch toward the lights, I felt a tremor of something I thought was dead inside me. A faint warmth, not from steam, but from knowing that the ecosystem, however engineered, could endure. Outside, the metallic hum of the radio generator has a new purpose, broadcasting our coordinates, our progress, our open invitation. Already, in the first broadcast from Sunwell's greenhouse, I heard faint replies voices, long dormant, rising again in curiosity and cautious optimism. A hunter-scavenger from 50 kilometers south reported spotting the steam vents from an ice ridge. 2 families awaiting rescue promised to set out. Not everyone will make it, but some will. I find myself unrecognizable from the woman who left the Frostbreaker silo just days ago. Then, survival was about rationing every scrap of fuel, every drop of water, every word on the radio. Now, survival is about stewardship, managing resources, not just to live, but to grow. In those frigid nights alone in the silo, I hoarded hope as though it were contraband. I counted it off in radio logs and ration tags, careful to dole it out. In small doses, but here, surrounded by humming vents and the soft rustle of leaves, I understand that hope is richer when shared. I think of Celeste. I carry her memory still, but it's no longer a burden of guilt. It's a beacon guiding me toward creation instead of mere endurance. I promised to survive for her hand. Now I'm living that promise by helping others find sanctuary. My hands are steadier now. The tremor born of fear has eased into purpose. My voice on the airwaves is firmer, imbued with something beyond desperation belief. Sunwell is an engineered oasis, not a reborn paradise. The glaciers above groan under shifting pressures. Vents can stall or erupt without warning. Methane seeps bubble through fissures, and we monitor them with sensors repurposed from old research stations. Initial readings show a 20% reduction in methane. Flux near our compound likely because steam is diverting into engineered channels rather than new cracks. That suggests our work might temporarily mitigate one form of greenhouse. Feedback. Beyond the compound's insulated walls, the ice fields remain as blank and lifeless as before. Storm tracks still carve new drifts, and scouring winds still scour the ice. The feedback loops of cold albedo haven't reversed. If anything, the wider world grows colder still, but small pocket ecosystems like ours could serve as seedbeds for future recovery way stations on a broader road to renewal. Nature's full healing, if it ever comes, will be measured in centuries. For now, our goal is sustainability, to ensure that Sunwell endures through the next storm season, the next wave of pressure surges, and the unpredictable wrath of a planet still reeling from past abuses. I walk the greenhouse aisles at dawn, checking humidity gauges and adjusting LED timers. Each seedling is an emblem of effort, proof that action can reshape fate. I've begun training volunteer teams former scavengers and soldiers who once sought supplies at gunpoint, now wielding trowels and pruning shears. The transition from raider to gardener is not seamless. Trust is fragile, grafted slowly, but every seed planted is a vow that we will protect it, nurture it, and in return, it will sustain us. I've renamed the main bellows Celeste, and when I pump steam into the conduit, I whisper her name. It's a small ritual, a way to honor the past while committing to the future. The radio room remains my pulpit. Tonight, I'll relay our success, share data on water yields and vent stability, and extend our invitation. I'll speak not as a lone survivor in a frozen world, but as the herald of a sanctuary born of ice and steam. Even in the glow of these domes, uncertainties loom. The ghost hawks may track our heat signature and strike, aiming to seize the compound. We've already reinforced perimeter gates and devised early warning sensors-buried geophones that detect approaching footsteps through ice. But defense is secondary. First, we must fortify purpose and unity. Climate feedbacks outside remain. Relentless polar vortex dislocations, ozone holes widening, methane plumes erupting from destabilized seafloor clathrates. Sunwell is an ark in a storm-tossed sea, but arks must find land eventually or drown. The long march of recovery requires connections, corridors between sanctuaries, information networks that span continents. One compound alone cannot tip the scales. I've begun drafting proposals for a ring of warmth, a network of geothermal pockets, solar stations where panels can be tilted above the snow, and greenhouse modules at strategic intervals. It's a blueprint for our next chapter, but it depends on cooperation, resources, and the stubborn will to rebuild as the first true dawn light filters through the frost-etched skylight. I stand at the edge of the central dome and breathe in the humid warmth. My breath clouds in the era reminder of how far I have come. From the brittle hitchhiker on the ice to a steward of nascent life, I press record on my handheld unit and speak to all of you out there, those hunkered down and forgotten. Metro tunnels, those hiding in rusted vehicles, those drifting across the ice. Sunwell lives. We are seeds in the sterile expanse, and we have found soil to grow. Follow our signal. We have water, we have warmth, we have hope. Join us and let us build a new dawn together. I let the recording run another minute of silence and invitation carried on static. Then I close my eyes and imagine the faces of those who will hear it, trembling with fear, heart pounding, confronted with a choice. I imagine them rising, stepping into storm-white wastelands, guided by the promise of green dot. The complexity of the world remains. The ice fields will not retreat. Overnight, alliances can fracture, and every breath outside this dome remains a negotiation with frost. But within me, a fire kindles a conviction that the worst disasters teach us our deepest truths, that survival is worthy, that hope can be engineered, and that humanity's greatest creation is not steel or steam, but the will to endure together. Tonight, the world may still slip further into cold despair, but here, in the afterglow of our triumph, I know one thing: we have begun, and beginning is everything. I stand beneath the greenhouse's frost-etched skylight as the first pale dawn creeps in, and I realize that this moment is as fragile as a single sapling breaking through ice. Steam still hisses from the vents, fogging the glazed domes. Outside, the world remains an endless white expanse, a realm of wind, ice, and uncertainty. But here within these engineered walls, something remarkable persists. Life. Hope is a precarious thing. It can shatter like glass under too much weight, or it can bend and yield, finding cracks through which to grow. In the days since the conduit mission, every minor victory, each degree of temperature gain, each sprout of green has felt like a universe reborn. Yet I know the euphoria cannot last. The vent could fail again. A storm could sever our power lines. Raiders could descend upon us. The world beyond these lights still rages in fury. Still, we press on. Every morning, I walk among the rows of quinoa, kale, and mushrooms, noting their progress in my log. I calculate water yields, ration fuel, check sensor arrays for fluctuations in pressure and methane. Each data point is a promise that tomorrow we may still be here. Every night, I broadcast our status, our coordinates, our invitation. I instruct would-be travelers in safe routes, weatherproofing tips, and signals to avoid accidental detection by hostile groups. But I do so knowing that broadcast itself is a gamble. Each time I crank the generator, I risk exposing our location to those who would do us harm. Yet silence is a different kind of death, one that leaves the world unaware, unlinked, and alone. So I speak into the static, voice trembling but determined, because connection is our greatest weapon against despair. In the quiet hours before sleep, I reflect on how far I've come. I am no longer the lone climatologist clutching ration tags in a frozen silo. I am a steward of a nascent community, tasked with more than survival. I am tasked with hopes, propagation. I carry the weight of every person who might answer our call, who might follow the steam plume across the white nothingness to find warmth and food and purpose. Yet I carry burdens too. I think of those who died en route, Juno, who collapsed from frostbite in the maintenance tunnel, the frost sentinels who gave their propane rations in good faith, the drifters who vanished chasing false rumors. There, ghosts whisper in the tunnels at night, a reminder that hope demands sacrifice, and that sacrifice isn't evenly distributed. Still, I choose hope. I plant seeds because I've seen them sprout. I share coordinates because I've seen survivors emerge from the drift. I teach the scientists, engineers, scavengers, and ex-soldiers among us to nurture rather than pillage. We repair what was broken, patching the ice tunnels, reinforcing the domes, chanting recipes for yeast cultures with the awe of religious incantations. I know that waiting for a perfect moment is a fool's errand. There will never be a perfect moment in this broken world. But the imperfect moments each sunrise that glows pale gold rather than steel gray, each crackle of radio static that carries another voice, each tendril of green unfurling from soil, these are enough to keep me moving forward. Our greatest task now is preparation. We are drafting blueprints for new domes, modular units that fold flat for transport, heated by small-scale reactors or solar arrays connected by insulated corridors. We're mapping potential geothermal sites, southern sunwells, waiting to be found, seeded by our success. We are cataloging resources, bartering with distant enclaves, forging alliances with scientists who have retreated into caves or underground bunkers. But none of this will matter if we lose the will to try. Despair is contagious. I have watched it spread like a frost blight, turning strong survivors into hollow shells who refuse to move, to speak, or to hope for rescue. Our beams of light must reach them. So I will keep sending my voice into the void, a beacon of possibility, no matter how faint. Tonight, I will deliver a final message for this broadcast cycle. To every ear tuning in, whether your lips are blue with cold, whether you shelter in an ice-choked subway car, or whether you wander alone across frozen plains, listen closely. You are not forgotten. You have value simply by being alive. We are gathering here at latitude 68 north, longitude 150 west, in a geothermal cavern we call Sunwell. We have water that flows, food that grows, and a community that cares. If you can make the journey, do so. Follow the steam plume. Follow the frequency 732 kilohertz, and you will find us. If you cannot come, pass this message onward. Spread the coordinates. Teach others how to melt ice with black pans, how to predict storms by barometric dip, how to insulate with snow. Every skill, every voice, every spark of courage matters. We survive not because the world has spared us, but because we refuse to let despair win. Hope is fragile. It can freeze or flicker out in one cruel blast of wind, but it can also endure if we tend it together. This is not the end. It is a continuous struggle for warmth, for water, for each other. But as long as we share knowledge, as long as we speak into the dark, as long as we plant seeds and voices like flags in the snow, we keep the promise of tomorrow alive. Stay human. Keep breathing. Keep speaking. I will be here, waiting for you, Mara Quinn, signing often till the next sunrise. When I finish, I let the silence stretch for a full minute, honoring the pause between one story and the next. Then I shut off the generator, the lights dim, and I walk into the warmth of the dome. I don't know what tomorrow holds. The vent could falter. The snow could bury our tunnels. The world could grow colder still. But for today, I have enough to keep going, enough to share, enough to fight for one more sunrise. So I choose hope. I choose to believe that even here, at the edge of despair, we can begin again. And as long as one seed can sprout and one voice can be heard, the world isn't done with us yet.